When it comes to Rings of Power and House of the Dragon, comparison was inevitable. Both are fantasy titans, both are coming out around the same time. One is going to be the most expensive show of all time, and one is the successor to the most popular show of all time. Now obviously, we want both shows to succeed. Good television is great for everybody, and I'd love to see both of these be bangers. But based off of what we know, which will be better? Let's get into it. Now before we jump into the video, I wanted to let you know I will be covering these shows episode by episode and dropping reviews and my thoughts on them. So if you're interested in that, like and subscribe, and let's get on with the comparison. Let's start it off with category number 1, budget and production time. Rings of Power cost a whopping $465 million, averaging out to $58 million per episode. This is absurd. Like, it's never been spent this much on a TV show, let alone a movie, I think. And it better show. This is something that is unprecedented in any form of media, and with only 8 episodes, this better be the best television we've ever seen in terms of visual effects, scale, and overall awesomeness. Now, when it comes to production time, they started in February 2020, and obviously because of COVID, it may have taken a bit longer, ending in August 2021. This gives me a lot of hope because they've had a long post-production period to perfect those visuals, actually put that money to work, whereas another Amazon Prime fantasy series in Wheel of Time felt very unpolished and rushed, especially in the VFX aspect. I really hope that they took their time and made this perfection, because if you screw it up, people are just going to be clowning you for spending that much money and not actually looking the best. Now moving on to House of the Dragon, which costs about 150 to 200 million for the whole season, ranging anywhere from 15 to 20 per episode, having a 10 episode season, which is great. I am so sick of these 8 episode seasons for television. Go back to 10. It was so much better for wrapping up a story. Now this doesn't seem like a lot of money as compared to the 465 million, but keep in mind Game of Thrones seasons cost around 100 million to make, averaging out 10 million per episode, and season 8, the best looking and best put together in terms of VFX, costs only 15 mil per episode. That 58 million of Rings of Power is not totally needed to look amazing, as proven by past Game of Thrones projects. I'm really hoping that they can pull through with some amazing visual effects and pretty much make us feel immersed in the Game of Thrones world yet again. When it comes to production time, they had a bit less time starting in April 2021. Now I'm not too worried about this, as the crew over at HBO used to turn out Game of Thrones seasons in about a year's time and they were top quality. So this doesn't worry me as much as an unproven crew and show like Wheel of Time, but overall the category of budget and production definitely goes to Rings of Power, simply for an absurd budget and also having extra time to put together a complete product. Although the 10 episodes of House of the Dragon does bring it close, as I enjoy having more TV of the TV that I like. For the next category, let's talk about showrunners. I think this is very important. As much as we hate D&D for the way they botched the ending of Game of Thrones, they did help produce the beginning parts of the series, which we all hold near and dear. For House of the Dragon, we have a relatively unproven writer in Ryan Condal. He did work in Colony, which was apparently pretty good, and has been vouched for by both George R.R. Martin and Stephen King. He also has put out stinkers like Rampage, but he also worked with The Rock again in Hercules, so maybe we'll get The Rock in Game of Thrones. I can think of a character perfect for him to play later in the series. He doesn't talk, he's a big guy, and he just kills people. I think his name is Sandog. But to really bring it home, we have Miguel Sapochnik. This man is the GOAT of Game of Thrones. He did Hardhome, he did Battle of the Bastards, and he did Winds of Winter. He has directed some of the best episodes, and I think the combination of the other guy writing and Miguel just to make it a banger direction will work really well. I am super hyped to have this guy back. He has produced some of the most 10 out of 10 content in all of fantasy. Now for Rings of Power, I'm a bit more worried to say the least. The executive producers are JD Payne and Patrick McKay, but these two guys only have credits for unreleased stuff. That is scary to have running the most expensive show of all time. They do have a multitude of other directors and producers to help them along the way, and then there are 3 main directors slash producers for the chunks of episodes. You have Wayne Knipp doing the first 4 episodes, and he has credits in both Utopia and Wheel of Time. And then you have J.A. Bayona, which has done Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which that's a little bit iffy. Yeah, there's cool visuals, but in terms of storytelling, not so much. And then finally there's Charlotte Brandstorm, which has a bunch of European films and foreign works. I don't really recognize any of them, so she's kind of unproven to me in terms of her work. But the two biggest things I'm worried about are one, these unproven executive producers, and also story by committee. This has been very prevalent in the Disney Plus TV shows lately, where it feels like a bunch of people got together in a boardroom and crafted a thing that would appeal the most to audiences. Not necessarily a work of good storytelling or passion, but just something that had mass appeal and would make them the most money. So I'm a bit worried about having all these hands in the cooking pot. So I'm giving this one to House of the Dragon for mostly Miguel Sapochnik and his already proven ability to create some of the best scenes in television history. The third category will be source material, and House of the Dragon has that in spades. A published, finished book by George R.R. Martin with a complete story, a complete set of characters, and all the plot lines you need to be Game of Thrones yet again. One of the cool things I found about this book was it's told from second-hand perspectives. Instead of the first-person POVs you get in A Song of Ice and Fire, it's told by maesters and other perspectives throughout the times, and not necessarily the characters themselves as they were involved. But I have faith in the actors of giving true to character performances and maybe also adding their own flair that makes them better. Something in Game of Thrones that surprised me after reading the books was I preferred some of the characters in the television and their portrayals by these actors, and I'm hoping the same can be said for House of the Dragon. Overall, the story is perfect. It runs great in the Game of Thrones world, has dragons, its scale is on par with that of A Song of Ice and Fire. The character intricacies, as I said, aren't quite as deep because you don't get in their heads, but there is a wide range of characters to get attached to. And from the trailers, you can see that I don't think they're adding any new characters, whereas Rings of Power seems to be adding new characters to Tolkien's world. Now, I'm not some Tolkien fanatic, I have not read the Silmarillion, but based off of these works, it is a bit concerning on the source material, as they only have access to the original trilogy and some appendices and not the actual storytelling of this time. So essentially, you're leaving it up to unproven executive producers and writers to write a story on par with what is the greatest author, some people say, of all time, and people have been trying to replicate this man's work for over 100 years. That is a bit concerning. Now, I'm not one of those crowds like, they're putting black people in Middle Earth. I don't care. As long as it's good TV, it's not a problem to me, but I'm more worried about some unproven, I don't want to say schmucks, but schmucks, trying to match Tolkien's work. Now, they do seem pretty confident in their interviews, but that will go. You don't want to be like, I don't know if I did a good job. But overall, this does leave me a bit concerned. As for the basic plot premises of the story, House of the Dragon is a tale of succession. The king is old and he has two possible heirs. One's a daughter and one's a brother. And in terms of medieval fantasy, sexism's a pretty big thing. So not many people are happy with having the daughter being named the heir. And when they have dragons and armies and castles, things tend to get a bit violent in the true Game of Thrones fashion. That's all I'll say for now, keep it very general. While Rings of Power is based on the creation of the Nine Rings and the destruction of Numenor. On the category of source material, I have to give it to the show with an actual book that it's based off of, let alone one written by a legendary fantasy author like George R.R. Martin. House of the Dragon wins this category in a landslide. The next category I'll be discussing is what I'll call vibes and visuals. This is purely based off of the latest trailers released, so the CGI and visual effects is as done as possible at this current moment. And I have to say, they both look really good. House of the Dragon nails the Game of Thrones vibe and even takes it to the next level. When you have repeated sets from past shows, you have to remain faithful so it doesn't feel jarring. And I think they even stepped it up. In these shots of Dragonstones, or these shots of arenas where we see that there's more people and it's more grand and the budget's really getting put to use, I like that a lot. And the biggest thing that stood out to me was the uniqueness of the dragons. In Game of Thrones, they kind of all look the same and it was a little boring, but in this show, they all have their different personalities and looks already on display in like a 2-minute trailer. They look different, they look unique, and they act different. That is something that I can't give props to enough, because in the book, they all have their distinct personalities and the way they go about things. I'm very glad to see that. Now, Rings of of Power, it just looks grand. I don't really know what to expect, but it looks like the budget is being put to use. Now we have to see if this is just fluff, as we talked about the storytelling earlier, but I can't knock any points for what we're seeing. It looks well put together, it looks massive, and some of the scenes and visual effects I really liked, especially with the Galadriel covered in that red dust. I also really liked the distinct looks that Galadriel and that other white M&M looking dude had. Those felt new and refreshing. I know some people want to see Galadriel as the same way she is in Lord of the Rings, but with thousands of years of difference, I want her to be different, to act different, and I think her in armor fighting, that's pretty cool to me. And along with that, I like the look of the goblins and I like the look of the orcs. They are very distinct, they look realistic. I know it is hard to blend that practical and CGI together, and that time I was talking about earlier, of which it won in category 1, I think that's really coming into play. And I really hope they hold up better than the Wheel of Time Trollocs did. But overall, I have to declare this category a tie. I think they both look great and they have their own distinct personalities. They're not trying to be anything that they're not. And I'm looking forward to seeing if the story matches the visuals. Now we come to the score and music of the show. I think this is what makes a fantasy epic. It doesn't necessarily break it, but it puts it to that next level. And House of the Dragon has the returning GOAT, Ramin Djawadi. This man did Westworld, this man did Game of Thrones. He has produced banger after banger. I have the utmost confidence in this man. He has just produced some of my favorite music and scores of all time, let alone in a TV show, just overall. I listen to this stuff in the car. He is excellent at what he does, and I have absolute pure confidence he's going to be delivering more songs that will be running through my head day after day. For Rings of Power, I got really excited as I saw Howard Shore, the guy that did the score for the original Lord of the Rings, was returning, but it was just for the main title theme. So I was like, damn, okay, so he's not doing the whole show, but he's at least doing the main theme, of which, I don't know, I thought it was fine. But something that actually surprised me and did intrigue me was the rest of the score and the samples that they put out. Bear McCreary, who has done The Walking Dead, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Battlestar Galactica, had 2 of his sample songs dropped by Amazon for Galadriel and Sauron. Sauron's pretty good. It actually did remind me of Ramin Djawadi's themes for the Targaryens, but the one I really liked was Galadriel's. It reminded me of a Star Wars theme, and I was vibing pretty good with it. I liked it a lot, but I'm sorry, until I hear the whole show and hear it with the scenes, I'm gonna have to give this to Ramin Djawadi because my faith in this man is utmost. The winner for score is House of the Dragon. Now, I tried hard to come up with another category, especially to give to Rings of Power, to make this video closer, but I wanted this to be an accurate portrayal of the information we have and which show seems better prepared to succeed in the fantasy genre of television, and I have to give that to House of the Dragon. Simply put, Rings of Power has me a bit worried with those naive showrunners, well, not necessarily naive, but unproven showrunners and lack of pure source material, whereas House of the Dragon seems to have things down to a pretty solid formula based off of their mistakes and successes in Game of Thrones. That's not to say Rings of Power won't be a massive success. I'm rooting for it big time. I would love to have another favorite television show come out of Amazon along with series like The Expanse or The Boys or Invincible. They have proven they can produce good television. I just hope the amount of money thrown at this show comes through in a big way. Overall, I am extremely excited for both, but I do have a bit more faith in House of the Dragon. As I said, I'll be covering both these shows as they release episode by episode, so like and subscribe to stay tuned. Bye.